Hello, welcome back to For Teachers. In today's video, we're going to be talking about interview questions that you might be asked as a school teacher.
So, Katie, can you remember your first interview?
I think the questions that I was asked, they did trip me up a little bit.
I just remembered your story.
The story about the puppies?
Yeah.
Ryan's laughing because I actually interviewed for the same school Ryan was working at. And on the day of the interview, I was getting really nervous and I was travelling to the school. And on the way, I passed this pet shop and in the window there was just tons of puppies. And I went in, I remember just holding this puppy and I just had this sense of calm.
I think sometimes if you've not spoken all day and then you're going into an interview and you've had 4 hours where you've sat outside the office thinking, and not really said anything.
Find a way to like get yourself in the zone for that kind of thing anyway.
Yeah, I don't really remember going to my interview because I'd gone from my placement school all the way to my the school where I interviewed. And again, I got the first one that I applied for. So I had a tour and I got the interview, but then I remember leaving and then afterwards I was like, this has to be perfect, this is amazing. And by the time I'd walked home, I got the call and I got the job, so I was so impressed.
That's good. I think I got the call in the evening. Teachers that we were in this Facebook group and they used to message like, I had an interview today, how soon will I find out? And it seemed like the answers were anything from an hour, 10 minutes to like a couple of days.
Yeah, I think when you're in that position, when you don't have a job and you really want one, I think there is that pressure that you, of course you're going to snap up the first offer that you get, and we did, but also we were really happy to get that job. But I think as well, like, you have to think that is just your first step of your teaching career. The first job you get is not necessarily going to be where you stay for life.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about some interview questions that you might expect to hear, things that we've definitely been asked in the past, and things that our contacts on social media have told us they've been hearing recently. So this could be like fresh teaching questions for interview right now. Got my book?
Yay! Do I have to answer them like interview questions?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, well, I'll tell you my process.
Of course, the first thing you probably will be asked, or is very often to be asked in interview, is tell me about yourself. And that can throw people, I think.
I think it's there as a lovely warm-up, and it's not necessarily something they're going to be grading you on or checking out your answers, but it should be something that flows naturally for you because you want to talk about yourselves in an interview, so obviously that's a great starting point. But then I think maybe some of the pitfalls you might fall into would be you just ramble you just want to tell them all about your life story or things that aren't related to teaching. Yeah,
next thing you know, you've told them like what you've been up to at university for the past 4 years or whatever. I think I've written here that I would split it into two halves. I do a very quick, oh, this is me as a person, and then I do a very quick, this is me as a teacher. You know, I was in the ski society at my university, so I just throw that in there. It's just an interesting little thing that they will maybe remember me for.
Yeah, people love to see people who are passionate, so whether you're passionate about your hobby, they also want to see that you're passionate about teaching as well, and see that you've got that same level of drive and passion for it. So as long as you're selling yourself, and I think the idea is that you've gone into the interview prepared and you should know that this question is gonna come up. So if you go, oh, I didn't know you were gonna ask about me, then that's gonna really fall flat and then you're gonna be really struggling to say. So definitely with all your interview questions, I would sequence them out a little bit, plan 2 or 3 points that you want to get in, and then hopefully they'll come back into your mind when you're rambling in front of the panel.
I can imagine me and you rambling so much.
Oh, well, that's another thing, that it's not always just one person interviewing, it's kind of a panel or it's a few people.
Yeah, in our first video, which we probably should have mentioned.
Well, we'll link it here.
We'll link it here. In our first video that we talked about interviews for teachers, we did talk about the structure that you might expect to see. So if you haven't watched that already, maybe go and check it out. Because we talk about the fact that it's not always going to be 4 teachers sat and the head teacher might not be there, and it could be the school council, it could be a different format. So just try and prepare for whatever you are faced with on that day. If I walked into your class, what would I see? And I think I've been asked this before as well.
Yeah.
What would you expect to see in a good classroom?
When I first started interviewing, I used to answer this and expect that they want to talk about like the environment, the displays and things like this, whereas I actually think
maybe more content based.
Maybe I think it's less about you and more about the kids. So they want to see the kids are on task, and they want to see that the kids are making progress, and that the kids know their targets. And these are all things that will come up in like your inspections and your observations.
It's really big in schools at the moment to take the focus off the teacher. There's a lot of talk about if Ofsted walk in, they actually just going to check the books for progress rather than looking at the teaching as much, because the logic is if you're teaching well, then the children will be making good progress and they will show their learning. Make it child-led, so the children are excited by something and they've taken that in a different direction. They've gone into an investigation about it and it's really relevant to the children.
They want to see that the kids are talking as well. I think sound level is another good thing as well. I think I'm really guilty of it. I love having a quiet, calm classroom, and I think you kind of train your kids for the first 6 weeks that they're going to talk really low in low voices and really respect the classroom environment. But actually having a buzzing classroom where everyone's discussing and sharing ideas in a kind way, listening to other people's opinions, I think that's something that you really want to push as well. You really want to show that that's something that you value.
Tell me about an outstanding lesson you have taught. And I think that links again with what we've just said, but I've also added in, make it very like cross-curricular. This is your chance. If you are really into PE or you're really into maths, and you can talk about how different subjects link together and how you've brought geography into your maths lesson by measuring the weather or something like that. If you just finished placement, have something in your mind that was a really special lesson. Maybe as well, because they could say, tell us about an outstanding maths lesson. Maybe have like a couple just in your head ready.
I plan things out to make sure that there's always those 3 stages. So I was always told to have statement and then evidence and then impact. You make your statement that this is the lesson that I did and this is now going to be the evidence of why it worked or how it worked well, and then the impact is that it had a lasting impression on the kids and they made progress. So I know this because I got great feedback from it. So if you try and sequence all your answers into those 3 parts, then you can kind of keep it in your mind, and once you've said the statement, the rest just kind of flows out. You kind of know where you're going, and then you move on to the next statement, and it also stops you from rambling on and on and on.
I mean, you could take some notes with you. I don't think there would be anything wrong with that either. You know you've got a great maths lesson but you can't recall it. If you've got something in front of you, you can just sort of check it, and I don't think any school would have a problem with that. If they did, then they're not being resourceful. Why do you want to work at Rainbow Academy? Like, why do you want to work at this school?
Yeah, I think they want to know that you've researched the school and that you know something about it. I think what they want to see is that you're just really keen to work in their school and you're not just blanket applying to everyone. But I think that you have to understand that as an NQT or a student, of course you've applied to every school that you could find. You really want a job. They appreciate that, and they know that you're applying to other schools. They want to see that you've really took a little bit of time, you've walked around the school, you've toured. Try and find about that school, what makes them special. Is it their environment, their community?
I think that's what I put as well. You can look at the blog that they've got, any websites. If they run a art and design club and you're really passionate about that, and while you're at university you ran an art and design club, you might be able to say, oh, and as an extension of that, I would really like to try doing a more outdoor art and design club. So you've kind of combined 2 of your interests and you're giving them something new that they might enjoy.
And I think also one key point is read their Ofsted report, but also don't quote it back to them. And don't start saying, and how are you going to tackle this reading challenge objective that Ofsted have given you?
Sometimes I've heard teachers are told to quote the Ofsted. They're told, like, read the Ofsted and mention it.
Definitely read it and make it clear that you've done your research. Or even if it's the most recent Ofsted report where the things are already in place to do that.
They've already started doing that.
And obviously you are there because they've got a vacancy. So you don't want to ask, well, why is this spot vacant? Or why haven't you got a reading teacher? Or why haven't you got a year 6 teacher when it's so vital on your Ofsted report?
How will you work effectively with support staff? So for example, TAs or learning support, because in, you know, British schools anyway, it's very, very common to have lots and lots of different members of staff working with your children, and you get asked a lot about how are you going to manage them, because you might be in charge of other adults, which when you're straight out of university can be really, really daunting. I remember having to work with people that were older than me, more experienced than me, and I had to tell them what to do, and I really didn't like that, but also I had to learn pretty quickly that that was my role. So if you were praised, oh, you worked really well with the TA or you worked really well with the learning support staff, like mention that. Be like, oh, you know, in my final report I was told that I'd managed the TA really well and we worked really well as a team. Then they'll know you're a team player from the start.
And I think part of the interview is as well, they're not necessarily going to take your answers as gospel and think, well, you said this 6 months ago in the interview, you never followed through. What they want really is just to get a sense of your character.
Other examples, and we can't really like cover them all, but we can give you a brief overview of questions to expect. You might be asked about behaviour management, and if you are, we've done a behaviour management video. Please check that out because I'm sure you would find it. Where is it?
One of these.
It's up here, because we've definitely addressed the kinds of things you might want to be saying in that interview. Random questions like, I know that this is crazy, but they might say like, oh, what's your favourite children's book? And if you can't answer that, or you just shout Harry Potter, because that's the easy answer, they might kind of, I don't know, remember that. Just have little answers ready for things like that, because I mean, they're not going to ask you like, what your favourite restaurant is, but they might throw like a curveball in there just to get an idea of your personality. So just have like a favourite maths resource, have a favourite English resource, have a favourite website, have a favourite app. Just have an idea of what your favourite things are, even if you don't necessarily have them yet. Just have little go-to answers just in case they throw those
Yeah,
at
in a
you.
past interview, the head asked kind of what's the favourite tip that you've ever learned on training, like.
Oh yeah.
But they were very fun in that they said like, training's awful, isn't it? And they were kind of like leading you into the idea that, oh, I don't want to say it's awful, but then they went like, it's always really bad, but you always learn one key thing.
What did you learn?
Yeah, what was the one key thing that you've learned? So I think really have something in your mind ready to go.
You might be asked about weakness. I don't really like the word weakness anyway. I would say improvement.
I think there is always a negative worded question though.
There's always one, isn't there?
Yeah, it's always tell me about a bad lesson that you've done, or tell me about your biggest weakness and area to improve. And you've really got to think about that. So I think it's really important that you don't suddenly go, oh, everything else I've just been telling you is all a lie. And actually this weakness is my biggest thing that I really can't get over. So you really want to keep that positivity on board and say, yeah, of course I've got loads of weaknesses, not too many, but they're all things that I'm really working on. Yeah, they're actionable, they're things I'm going to think about, they're already on my agenda, and I can't wait to get into the class in September and start to improve on all these areas.
Secretly, like, I wasn't as keen on teaching maths, I was much more confident teaching English. It's actually changed now, but back in the day, I can imagine myself sitting in an interview, and if I was asked about weaknesses, I can imagine saying something like, oh, my maths teaching isn't so good, but really that's like 50% of what you're expected to do as a teacher.
My whole morning.
Yeah, so maybe don't plug something really, really brutal like that. Maybe talk more about, if you're still getting your head around something like time management from placement, you could say that. You could say, sometimes I have so many ideas in lessons that we run over, but I'm working on my time management and now I'm cutting it back down to a 60-minute lesson.
I think another one might be kind of when you're doing your placements, you're kind of planning everything by yourself. It might be nice to say, I can't wait to work as part of a bigger team and share my ideas and learn from someone who's a bit more experienced.
Your weakness could be, I'm kind of ready to fly,
but I need some guidance. Yeah.
Something that's always asked in teacher interview, and any interview I think around the world probably, is, do you have any questions? So this is really tricky.
There are some things you just need to avoid. Don't just say, when do I start?
Yeah, don't ask about money.
Yeah, don't ask about the pay or the salary necessarily. It should already hopefully have been on the contract that you, or the application that you looked at. On the flip side, you don't want to just sit there and go, nope, no questions. Yeah, so definitely go in and have some questions prepped. So something that you can ask in every instance. I've walked past this school so many times, I didn't realise that we had a new head teacher. How long have you worked here? So make it more personable.
Ask about the community, because that's a really big buzzword in schools at the moment. What community events are there that I could get involved with, because I really like getting to know everyone in the school. And if I asked a teacher in your school what they enjoy about working here, what do you think they would say? I like that one.
Yeah, don't say, why did the last person leave?
Don't ever say that. And don't forget, if you've got a friend that's just finished placement 2 or someone on your course, you can do a little interview like Ryan and I
Definitely. I can't believe we got to the end of the video and didn't mention that. Sit across from them, make good eye contact, have a glass of water there, and make sure that you're answering questions. Practice looking them in the eye and smiling as you're talking. Smile. It all helps. Sometimes I forget. If you're going for an interview this year, put some questions below. Anything that you've heard, anything new, and then we'll do another video to reflect on all those really current questions that you're getting asked. Fingers crossed you get the first one, but it's not the end of the world. There are loads of jobs out there, particularly in the UK at the moment, so keep applying. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Every subscribe counts. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.